Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/BrianEDenton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading and reflection is on Chapter 80. Chapter 80. To say tomorrow and keep up a dignified tone was not difficult, but to go home alone, see his sisters, brother, mother, and father, confess and ask for money he had no right to after giving his word of honor, was terrible. At home they had not yet gone to bed. The young people, after returning from the theater, had had supper and were grouped round the clavichord. As soon as Nicholas entered, he was enfolded in that poetic atmosphere of love which pervaded the Rostov household that winter, and, now after Dólokhov's proposal and Yogol's ball, seemed to have grown thicker around Sonia and Natasha, as the air does before a thunderstorm. Sonia and Natasha, in the light blue dresses they had worn at the theater, looking pretty and conscious of it, were standing by the clavichord, happy and smiling. Vera was playing chess with Shinshin in the drawing-room. The old countess, waiting for the return of her husband and son, sat playing patience with the old gentlewoman who lived in their house. Denisov, with sparkling eyes and ruffled hair, sat at the clavichord striking chords with his short fingers, his legs thrown back and his eyes rolling as he sang, with his small, husky, but true voice, some verses called Enchantress, which he had composed, into which he was trying to fit the music. Enchantress, say to my forsaken lyre, what magic power is this recalls me still? What spark has set my inmost soul on fire? What is this bliss that makes my fingers thrill? He was singing in passionate tones, gazing with his sparkling black agate eyes at the frightened and happy Natasha. Splendid, excellent, exclaimed Natasha. Another verse, she said, without noticing Nicholas. Everything's still the same with them, thought Nicholas, glancing into the drawing-room, where he saw Vera and his mother with the old lady. And here's Nicholas, cried Natasha, running up to him. Is Papa at home? He asked. I'm so glad you've come, said Natasha without answering him. We are enjoying ourselves. Vasily Dmitrievich is staying a day longer for my sake, did you know? No, Papa is not back yet, said Sonia. Nicholas, have you come? Come here, dear, called the old countess from the drawing-room. Nicholas went to her, kissed her hand, and sitting down silently at her table, began to watch her hands arranging the cards. From the dancing-room, they still heard the laughter and merry voices trying to persuade Natasha to sing. All right, shouted Denisov. It's no good making excuses now. It's your turn to sing the Baccala. I entreat you. The countess glanced at her silent son. What's the matter? She asked. Oh, nothing, said he, as if weary of being continually asked the same question. Will Papa be back soon? I expect so. Everything's the same with them. They know nothing about it. Where am I to go? Thought Nicholas, and went again into the dancing-room where the clavichord stood. Sonia was sitting at the clavichord, playing the prelude to Denisov's favorite barcarolle. Natasha was preparing to sing. Denisov was looking at her with enraptured eyes. Nicholas began pacing up and down the room. Why do they want to make her sing? What can she sing? There's nothing to be happy about, thought he. Natasha struck the first chord of the prelude. My God, I'm a ruined and dishonored man. A bullet through my brain is the only thing left me, not singing, his thoughts ran on. Go away? But where to? It's one let them sing. He continued to pace the room, looking gloomily at Denisov and the girls and avoiding their eyes. Nikolinka, what is the matter? Sonia's eyes fixed on him seemed to ask. She noticed at once that something had happened to him. Nicholas turned away from her. Natasha, too, with her quick instinct, had instantly noticed her brother's condition, but, though she noticed it, she was herself in such high spirits at that moment, so far from sorrow, sadness, or self-reproach, that she purposefully deceived herself, as young people often do. No, I am too happy now to spoil my enjoyment by sympathy with anyone's sorrow, she felt. And she said to herself, no, I must be mistaken. He must be feeling just as happy as I am right now. Now, Sonia, she said, going to the very middle of the room where she considered the resonance was best. Having lifted her head and let her arms droop lifelessly, as ballet dancers do, Natasha, rising energetically from her heels to her toes, stepped to the middle of the room and stood still. Yes, that's me, she seemed to say, answering the rapt gaze with which Denisov followed her. What is she so pleased about? Thought Nicholas, looking at his sister. Why isn't she dull and ashamed? Natasha took the first note. Her throat swelled, her chest rose, her eyes became serious. At that moment she was oblivious of her surroundings, and from her smiling lips flowed sounds which anyone may produce at the same intervals and hold for the same time, but which leave you cold 1,000 times, and the 1,001st time thrill you and make you weep. Natasha, that winter, for the first time had begun to sing seriously, mainly because Denisov so delighted in her singing. She no longer sang as a child. There was no longer in her singing that comical, childish, painstaking effect that had been in it before. But she did not yet sing well, as all the connoisseurs who heard her said. It is not trained, but it is a beautiful voice that must be trained. Only they generally said this sometime after she had finished singing. While that untrained voice, with its incorrect breathing and labored transitions, was sounding, even the connoisseurs said nothing, but only delighted in it and wished to hear it again. In her voice there was a virginal freshness, an unconsciousness of her own powers, and an as yet untrained velvety softness which so mingled with her lack of art in singing that it seemed as if nothing in the voice could be altered without spoiling it. What is this? Thought Nicholas, listening to her with widely opened eyes. What has happened to her? How is she singing today? And suddenly, the whole world centered for him on anticipation of the next note, the next phrase, and everything in the world was divided into 3 beats. O mio crudele affetto. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. O mio crudele affetto. 1, 2, 3, 1. Oh, this senseless life of ours, thought Nicholas. All this misery, and money, and Dolokhov, and anger, and honor. It's all nonsense. But this is real. Now then, Natasha, now then, dearest, now then, darling. How will she take that C? She's taken it, thank God. And without noticing that he was singing, to strengthen the C, he sung a second, a third below the high note. Ah, God, how fine. Did I really take it? How fortunate, he thought. Oh, how that chord vibrated, and how moved was something that was finest in Rostov's soul. And this something was apart from everything else in the world, and above everything in the world. What were losses, and Dolokhov, and the words of honor? All nonsense. One might kill and rob, and yet be happy. All right, so that concludes my reading of chapter 80. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll now proceed to my reflection on the same. A Year of War and Peace, Day 80. O mio crudele affetto. Today, Nicholas Rostov learns lesson number 1 of the Ferdinand Bartomeu School of Hard Knocks. Quote, we are the minions of King Misery. He's our lord and master. When we misbehave, he tightens his grip. End quote. Rostov's feelings of depression and suicidal thoughts, brought on by his recent losses at the gambling table, are further compounded when he returns home and finds a happy social gathering. It must have been very hard for him to endure this scene of merriment. After all, he's suffering intensely while all about him his family expresses their happiness in song and dance. Denisov, his friend, joyfully sings a composition he has created for Natasha, who is obviously in love with. Natasha, in turn, is flattered and, still ensconced within the blissful intoxication of her first ball experience, enjoys it all with a big smile. Rostov, meanwhile, remains sadly intent on finding his father so he can ask for money he owes Dolokhov. But his father isn't home yet. Given what we know about him, he's probably out losing money for the family too. Like son, like father. We might expect, given Rostov's recent mood, that he'd remain aloof from the happy proceedings of this home while he awaits his father's return. But instead, something interesting happens. Natasha starts singing. Her singing is so beautiful it provokes something in her brother's heart, something wondrous and soothing. He opens up. All his misery, he thinks to himself as he listens to his sister's sonorous voice, and money, and Dolokhov, and anger and honor, it's all nonsense, but this is real. And with that, a simple change of heart. He joins, if only momentarily, the elation of the Rostov home. He sings. One shouldn't minimize the problem of amassing such a huge debt. Nicholas is in trouble, that's for sure. The final passage of this chapter, however, is instructive. It just may point him towards a mindset that will enable him to deal better with difficult situations in the future. In order to cope with these difficult situations, or better yet, avoid them altogether, it helps to cultivate a robust and mindful mental disposition. That is, if he could somehow capture the joyful temperament he experiences while listening to Natasha sing, and find a way to make it a permanent resident in his mind rather than a passing traveler, then perhaps he wouldn't feel compelled to gamble, allow himself to get so angry all the time, or engage in other risky behaviors. Daily meditation. In the blessings of life, as well as in the ills of life, less depends upon what befalls us than upon the way in which it is met. That is, upon the kind and degree of our general susceptibility. Arthur Schopenhauer, The Wisdom of Life. All right, thanks for listening. Remember that if you'd like to support me, you can do so either by purchasing the ebook, A Year of War and Peace, becoming a patron at patreon.com, or making a one-time donation at PayPal. The links to all that are below in the show notes. Your support is greatly appreciated. Tomorrow, we will be reading and reflecting on Chapter 81. I hope you'll join me. Until then, take care of yourselves and of others.